visiting me from Mount Victory. Hey, I'm Matt Corradino, Mount Victory Camp, Caribbean Earth Skills.
I am still Brad Salon from Root School.
That's right. What are we talking about this week, Brad?
Today we are talking about how to keep it going. You've taken a class, you've read a book, you've ingested some sort of inspirational, educational information or experience, and now you're trying to figure out like how to keep it going. Which, you know, looking back at like my years of doing the skills, I would definitely have the experience of taking a class. You're surrounded by tons of people who are super excited about it. That you're getting all these new information and everything's taken care of for you.
Not just that, it's like a whole group.
Right.
Right, you're riding on that collective group energy. And how in the world do you recreate that?
Now it's both our kids causing mayhem with chickens and not just not just your kid.
That's what the chicken mayhem is in the background.
Yeah.
Pretty hilarious. In case you're wondering out there what the hell's going on with this background, keep trying to move away from
children harassing
keeping the excitement when your children are harassing the chickens in the background. And I just want to work on this super cool skill. Yeah. So how did you do it? How did you keep the stove?
Sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I failed to do that and would like fall into my patterns and feel crappy about myself and not be as hardcore as I wished. But in general, I would say like you just have to be 19 years old, have no job, and live with your parents. No responsibility, no children.
There's no hope for the rest of you people. That's it.
You know, if you have that situation, you're set.
But even in that situation, come on.
I made choices that put the skills in my way. I think that's like a part of it. So it's like, you know, I took a job teaching the skills to little kids, even though like that wasn't something.
Even though it didn't pay you a penny.
Yeah. Oh God, dude, it was. When I look back at it, it's like, wow, I was literally making like $40 a day.
We're still getting paid
14-hour days.
Just inflation makes the numbers more, but it's not actually more than pennies.
So, yeah, man. But like putting it in my way in that way. And then I let the things I was obsessed about lead me to other things. So like instead of being like, oh, I have to learn all of it at once, if I was stoked on bow drill, then it was what tests can I give myself? Can I make bow drill with every wood I can find in like every type of tree species I come across? Am I in a new place? Great. I need to do 5 different woods, you know, and like pushing myself in different ways of giving myself progressive overload. Like I didn't know I was doing it. And until I really was studying like weightlifting, it didn't ring a bell for me, but I was doing it naturally of like giving myself a challenge and then making it harder and harder and harder so that I could achieve some success.
But was that natural for you
I think
to do? Because that's not necessarily natural for people to do. But they might not do that in their everyday life. So how are they going to apply it to skills if they're not doing that if they're not that generally that type of person?
Right. I think I saw it role modeled. You know, both through like my mom was a teacher. So when she was teaching us kids, whatever, there was always a sense of like, give somebody something doable and then make it a little harder and make it a little harder and make it a little harder. Whether it was our chores or whether it was like, you know, oh, you're interested in learning this, like let's pick an easy one and then do a harder one and a harder one and a harder one. And then, you know, ideally schooling is done that way. And so when I came to like, I want to learn this now, then it just made sense to me to be like, okay, I'm going to give myself a challenge that's doable. You know, what is the first step to learning this? All right, get that down.
So was that a process that you understood was happening at the time, or was that something that...
No.
Okay.
No,
yeah,
not
that's
at
what
all.
That's what I figured.
But now in hindsight, like if I'm going to tell a student how to do something, I'm going to say like approach it in that way. And then
because I wonder if you'd have been able to do that if you had it laid out for you. I'm not saying that that's not a good thing to tell the student to do that, but I know for myself, if somebody can lay something out for me in a certain process, and I might go with that process, but there's the challenge of the process is the thing and not the outcome. You know, for
Well,
me, it was chasing the outcome,
Yeah.
not chasing the process down.
So trick yourself into that by giving yourself outcomes that are incremental.
Yep.
And that way you hit those goals, you know, it's like, you know, and that way you give yourself those steps of like, okay, can I get smoke with a bow drill? Great. If you can get smoke, then what's the next step? Can I get an ember? Great. You can get an ember. That is a success. Like I was talking to a buddy of mine who's like a really good hunter, has been killing deer his whole life in Vermont, which is a hard place to hunt.
Are there even deer there?
Yeah.
I thought it was just spruce trees and bears.
And he can, you know, successfully hunt with all the different, through all the different seasons. He's a good hunter. And he was like, look, man, if you get out of your bed and get in the tree, that's a success. Like you have to count that as a success. If the only version of hunting success is killing a deer,
hunting. Oh yeah.
then you're never gonna like, or your success is so rare. And every time you come in and you didn't, you know, have success, you're gonna beat yourself up. He's like, no. Like, did you make it to your tree without making a lot of noise? Did you follow a descenting regiment that you think makes sense? Did you, you know, like you have to count every little thing you can as a success so that your morale stays high. And I think that is really true for the skills, is like, especially when you first get into it, it's this huge world and it's super overwhelming and there's like all these people who are so much better than you and it seems impossible. But if you just like count any little bit of growth as success, which it is, then that will keep your stoke high. You know, it'll keep your excitement high. Whereas if you do the opposite, which is like you make the only version of success, like now you are the master, then you'll never get there.
See, I think I was thinking about this, and I was wondering what was my process, because I look back, and it's almost like I don't want to say fantasy version of reality, but there's almost this aspect of I'm not that person that I was when I was able to keep that stoke high. I am, but it's just become part of myself. And I realized when I was thinking about this is in my mind, and again, this wasn't like a process I was going through or anything I was trying to do. In my mind, it's almost as if I had created this fantasy version of myself, of who I would become if I was good at all these skills, right? So in other words, I created a goal, not a goal of successfully hunting a deer or successfully making an arrow or successfully making a bow drill, but the goal of like becoming somebody else, or becoming the most highest evolved version of myself that I could become.
Right.
Right. So in my mind, there was this, you know, skills superhero that I would become eventually.
Right.
And in those times where it was like, all right, I got my 5 minutes that I got to put in today, or I got my hour that I got to put in today, or even some days where it was like, well, I have to go climb my tree, because I made rules for myself.
Right.
And one of those rules was I had to climb a tree every day, just because that was something that I was stoked about, that was outdoors, that I knew would draw me closer to being in nature. But it wasn't just, I have to climb a tree today. And none of this was, that part was conscious. That part was like, okay, consciously, I have to climb a tree today. Shitty 14-hour day of work that shouldn't have been like that because the boss and the blah, 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 blah. Doesn't matter, got to go out and climb a tree, right? Conscious choice. Unconscious choice is that as I was out there, there was like this fantasy version of myself that I was stepping into, right? This like ultimate goal of myself that I was embodying. And I didn't even realize it at the time, which is funny because now I look back on it and it's like there was this end goal, this evolution of myself that I would become that person that, you know, you read about that person who's living in that tribal situation and their awareness is far beyond what we experience nowadays. And their connection and understanding is far beyond what we could understand, right? There was like this fantasy version of myself that could do that.
Right.
And so it wasn't just I'm going to climb a tree every day. It was like there's a version of myself that dives into all of this, that like soaks all of it and is rejuvenated by all of this. Right. But I never would have been able to tell you that at the time. I would have been like, I suck at this, and I'm just trying my best. But now when I look back on those times when I was really like first starting and keeping that stoke going, it was like, yeah, it was almost like I had already created this entire world that I was just stepping into. Right. And so I didn't have that, like what you're talking about, where it's like, if I go outside, that's a success. If I just go hunting, that's a success. To me, it was still like kicking myself for not shooting the deer or kicking.
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't have that either. That's like an approach I've had to take later in life. And like, you know, I guess the other thing would be like, you know, when I was younger and even now, like a big part of the way I linked up with the skills or kept them going was to share them with other people.
I think that's most of what I have to do nowadays. That's
right.
Such a huge part of it.
And I like naturally and maybe unfortunately weeded out my friend group as to who would tolerate me incessantly talking about the skills and incessantly being like, we should go to the woods. We should go here. We should do this. We should do that.
Did you have that moment where you were like, I can't hang out with you, dude?
Oh, I had friends straight up be like, dude, shut up. Shut up about the skills. I don't care about it. I don't want to live in the woods.
I had friends who were like, no more bow drill in my house. It smelled like fire. But it smells so good. No, it doesn't. It smells like shit. Yeah. Let me just tell you, my girlfriend hates it.
Yeah, and you figure out who's worth hanging out with, despite the fact that they're not obsessed with what you're obsessed with.
Many of those friends are still around as friends, surprisingly. We just don't spend nearly as much time together as we used to spend together.
But I mean, it also becomes an issue of like shared values, and you just end up kind of like hanging with people who at least get it, at least get why you would be into it.
You know, when I look at we usually bash on the whole nature connection idea. Yeah. You know, like seeking out a nature connection, right? You can't really like seek something out that is intuitive, right? You can't explicitly do something that is implicit by nature,
right? And
I feel like that's kind of part of what today's discussion kind of is. Like, you know, these are tricks, these are like constructs, abstract constructs that we're trying to move into.
Well, right, because you can't like make yourself something you're not. You can try really hard, but you're probably not going to get there. So it's like, I think some of what people encounter is discovering that they don't really want it. That like they like the idea of it, but then when they see what it actually is, it's kind of like, I think everyone's had the experience of like being really excited about a new person romantically, and then you know,
check under the hood and there ain't much power in that there engine.
Actually, do I really want this? Like, this person isn't all I thought they were.
You see, I didn't go down 9/10 of the roads of jokes. We kept it kosher.
That was a carefully tread path.
I've been told that we've got more than one woman listening, and somehow we avoided offending all four of them, or five of them.
But yeah,
so wait, there's something in there that you said that I don't want to forget, so I'm just gonna talk more. So I wasn't looking at somebody else and being like, I want to be like that person when I'm in the woods. I was when I said I was creating a fantasy, and I wasn't creating a fantasy, right? I just had this belief of where I could get to. Right. I had this goal that I could set, but the important part there was that it was me. I was there. Well, I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be like this dude because he'd look at all these cool things he did. It was more like, what story am I going to tell with this? And I think that's a big part of what we're talking about is a lot of times people go to the class, they go to the rendezvous, they what did you say? Ingest some form of educational. So they do that, and this isn't to like. It's just something that I see that happens is they're thinking about the stories of the person that the person is telling, and not necessarily putting the same value on the stories that they're going to tell about what they did. Right. And I think that's a huge part of it is not being like, oh, like I want to do what that person did because holy shit, like look what they were able to do, but more like, holy shit, I see myself doing this one day.
Right.
And there's so many versions of okay, why am I doing this? Because one day I'm going to be able to wander. That was like my first little goal. I was going to wander from the East Coast to the West Coast in a survival situation. And then it was, oh, well, I'll hike the Appalachian Trail but not bring any gear and just survival. And don't care if it takes me 5 years. And then it was, I'm going to teach this kind of school where we're doing caretaking. Like there was always different versions of it. But the important part was that it was like me. I was envisioning what I could become.
Right.
Not following what somebody else could become. Oh, look at this interruption to our podcast right now. That's okay. That's okay. She's not even on camera right now.
A future guest.
Hey, come on in here. Just say hi. Yeah. You got to go down more. There she is. Ruth Ann Colby Martin.
Next week's guest.
That's it. That's next week's guest. She's here. She's jumping in the way. So we weren't listening to Ruth Ann and being like, I'm going to be like Ruth Ann one day. It was like, I'm going to do what she could do, but I'm going to do it.
Well, right. I think that brings up like something that I think is super important, and this might go into another podcast of like mistakes students make. But I think like when you're out in the woods doing the skills, you need to be hearing your own voice guiding you, not other people's. And that was a mistake that I made, especially with hunting, was I'd hear like other people being like, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, as opposed to just locking into what am I doing, what feels good to me, what intuition do I need to follow, like what am I hearing from myself. And I think that a lot of this is kind of coming back to like you need to have your own connection, and you can be inspired by other people, but at the end of the day it has to be you wanting it and you doing it, or you're never gonna push yourself hard enough to actually get there. And like you are talking about how when you were younger, it wasn't an envisioning of like you becoming somebody else. It was you doing these things. And I think that's the trick, is like what goals, like you got to ask yourself and even sit down with a journal and be like, what are my goals? What do I want to do? And it's not like, what level do I want to get to? It's like, what things do I want to experience and go do them? And like push, what steps do I need to do to get ready for that? Like if going into full survival is your goal, like what is between you and success at that goal? If you're super hard-headed and you have nothing but an endless well of passion, then you could just go out with no experience and
you'd
just
be fine.
beat
Yeah,
yourself
eventually
into submission. Or you could be like, all right, this time I'm going camping.
See, but I think
I'm
you're going to
bringing everything but the tent. Next
I think
time
you're going to get
camping,
defeated with that, though. I think that if you are just going super hard-headed, you're going to start with that,
No,
but
that
eventually...
was more of a joke.
Yeah.
That's like for 18-year-old boys listening.
They're already
Just
done.
get out there.
They're already done, bro. They listen to the short, and that's
fine.
it. They don't have the patience for the whole hour and a half. You think you're talking to.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
Well, there's something in there that you said, too, that like maybe wasn't like explicit is, okay, so it's like, so sure, you create a goal, right? I want to be good at X. I want to be great at, hunting, whatever that is. But there's a difference between like, I want to be great at this, and so that's one way of looking at it, right? Where the goal is the thing, but the other part of that is like, so that's external, right? You create the goal and it's external, it's outside of you, and I'm trying to like reach this goal that's over here, but it's still something external, versus like, okay, I'm going to become this, or there's this part of me that's there. I'm just on step one.
Right.
So like internalizing that goal or approaching it from where it's already in there. It's just in seed form.
Well, right. Those things, though, for me, it's like the external goals that drag the rest of me forward. Like learning freediving and spearfishing, and like the goal was like I saw somebody stab a fish and eat it, and I was like, that looks fucking cool. Ding, ding. I want to do that. And then it was like, okay, I need to learn how to do a breath hold. I need to learn how to fin appropriately. I need to learn what spears work in what environment. I need to learn which fish are most approachable or how to approach them. Like, and then I started picking away at it to the point of like going to the pool because I live in Vermont and it's winter all the time and being like, which is the deepest pool? Okay, I'm going to find that pool and I'm going to sit on the bottom of it and do breath holds because I know that my window in St. Croix is short and I want to have the most experience I can going into it, and researching and practicing and all the different parts of it. And the part of me that is somebody who can go into the water and stab a fish is that. I never thought of myself as I am becoming a person who does that. I thought that's a thing I want to do. I want to experience that. And then a lot of me had to change and grow and face fears and face challenges to do that, and to fail a lot, and
so there's another little part in there that you just said that hit me, is I don't think there wasn't much thinking involved. Right. And I think that's super important. Right. Because the more you think, then now it's all abstract, and I'm just trying to reach this goal that's out there. Right. How can I really be stoked about, waking up at 3:30 in the morning, putting on the clothes and freezing my balls off, in a tree for day after day? It's pretty freaking hard to be stoked about that. But only if you're only going to be defeated by that if you only have your eyes on the prize. Right. Right. And so there's a bit of it that's not thinking. It's the alarm went off and just getting up, right? I was told to do this, so I'm just going to put this thing on. Right.
And the more you disconnect from overthinking everything, the less painful the process will be.
Remove those expectations.
Right. And just try and lock into what am I experiencing, and that is key. And most people I know are not in danger of under reflecting or under thinking. Yeah. Especially these days. But connecting to that visceral, if there's an idea in your head that rings a bell that you're fuck yes, I want to do that. Don't overthink that. Just make steps forward towards it, and know that some of the paths you take won't be the right one, and that you're going to experience failure on the way, and that's totally a part of the process. But those, you got to let them be lessons and move on. And I think that's another thing, in terms of keeping the stoke high, is expect failure. If you're gonna have any expectations, let it be failure, that you're going to fail, and that failure, as much as they suck, is mostly for your ego, sometimes for your wallet, sometimes for your relationships. But mostly it's just a function of
Let's just be honest here. There was no relationship happening back then. People were like, who's that dirty dude?
Oh, man.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Thank goodness, right? It could have
I was, I didn't want anyone wasting my time.
Is that what it was? Is that what it was? Oh, that's all that was happening right there. Oh, I never knew it.
All you want to do is work on skills.
Damn right, that's all I want to do is work on. Why don't you work on skills with me? Oh, I wish. Anyway, okay, we don't need to dive down that. Should that be a conversation for another time?
Yeah.
How do I find somebody who actually puts up with all this shit?
Yeah.
Good luck on that one.
I just broke the no fraternization rules. So did you.
Oh no! I got a number for later. Save that number for later. Something that I didn't realize that I was doing. So you were talking about the flip side of this when you were talking about relationships and friendships that you wrecked for the sake of these skills. So we tend to, everybody knows in our human history it was this tight-knit village. We use the word community, but that's just a word that has so little concrete meaning.
Yeah, it's beat to death.
But we all know that people were social animals. We want to be around other people, and that at one point in history we were directly connected to our sustenance from the earth, and directly connected to our lineage, current and past lineage, and we've changed that nowadays, where we abstractly view this thing as a separated lineage. So anyway, what I didn't, in my mind, it was the village setting where we're all doing primitive skills and living, by our hands. And if I had seeked that as a goal, I would have stopped this a long time ago, because, you're almost never going to find that
Right.
unless you happen to move into it. But what I was doing was strengthening my connections with people who were into it.
Yeah.
And making the effort to stay connected, right? So there's this person that I met at this class that we were buddies at the class, and I'm going to call that person, and I'm going to keep talking about this and keep like telling the stories and listening to the stories. But then there would be a certain feeling that I would get from being around certain people. And maybe some of the people that I was like calling and was like, hey, dude, let me tell you this story about this thing that I did, where I didn't realize it at the time, but that feeling wasn't necessarily there.
Right.
Right. And then that person just isn't necessarily still doing this stuff.
Right.
And I guess I didn't realize how selective I was actually being. Whereas there were other people where it was like, that's a kindred spirit, right? That's like my tribe right there. They might live 4 hours away.
Right.
I might only see them at these times, but it wasn't like calling, like, oh, I got to call this person and tell this story and hear what their story is along these same lines, which was what was happening. And then it was like, I wouldn't hear that story back. And then it would seem like this effort.
Right.
Versus the other people where it would just flow. And I wouldn't even think about, I got to call this person and tell them this story. It would just be like, I'd happen to call them for something else, or they would call me. And then that feeling would grow on its own. And then, I guess what I'm saying is that I didn't bemoan not having that when it wasn't right immediately present. And if I had bemoaned not having that when it wasn't immediately present, it would have been harder to keep that stoke going.
Right. Yeah, you're lucky if you have even one friend who's into the skills that you can do them with. And I think that, like, a couple of things I would say on that note is, like, one, be humble enough to either be better or worse than the people who you're hanging out with. Like, if you're
better, I'm opting for better.
Like, if you're better than people, then it's an opportunity to get
Bring 'em
better at
along.
teaching,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then if you're worse, then you're like, fuck yes. Like, my whole thing is, like, if you want to get better at a skill, hang out with somebody who's better at it than you. Like, it's like the best way to
you
learn
don't like
tracking.
that?
Yeah, exactly, right? But it's like, when I want to have a bump forward in tracking, I know who's better at me than tracking. And I'm like, hey, do you want to go tracking? To the point of even being like, I will hire you for a day to go tracking.
That's the hardest one right there, is the tracking.
Yeah, but
to
it's
keep
like,
the stoke on sometimes. Sometimes.
Well, but that's the thing that does it, is like, I'll go get a private lesson from George Leoniak and be like, hey, dude, just stump me. Just, like, take me to things that I won't know what they are, and, like, make me be like, shit. Because that's what's going to, for me.
I think there needs to be a balance there, though. I really do.
But that, for me, I've learned that for me, it's like seeing where my edges are and what I don't know is like, makes me be like, I want to fill that gap. Whereas just like having him ask me questions where I'm like, I know that, like, that doesn't do shit for me.
Yeah.
Like, I get excited. Like, I took that Cyber Tracker evaluation, which, like, I could give a shit about what my score is. I don't have I'm not a wildlife biologist that needs to be able to prove that my data is viable, or like, I'm not looking for a tracking job. But the cool part about that evaluation was that every time you get an answer wrong, they're going over the answers. And so you're going to sit around as a group and they're going to go through the diagnostics of like, why is this definitely a fox track? And there's no question. It can't be anything else. It is a fox track for these 15 reasons. And like, so if you didn't know what it was, you're going to learn what it is and why. And that was invaluable to me. And it really like painted the picture of like, knowing what you don't know is how you fill in those gaps. And especially with tracking, like, trailing is a different animal, because that's more like the edges are more blurry than like clear print ID or gate interpretation, where like it is something, or the answer is it's like indiscernible. There isn't enough information between a long-tailed weasel and mink track. Sometimes there is no way to tell the difference between those two tracks. And that's also good to know, is like, what are the edges of where, clear print ID breaks down and it can't give you an answer between 2 types of vole or
Yep.
2 types of shrew. So anyway, yeah. So like being humble enough to not care about what your place is, just be happy that there's people to work the skills with. And then, like being the one to call or to like put yourself out there, and don't worry about like the social rejection factor of like inviting someone to work on skills or calling someone and asking how their hunting season's going or whatever it is. Like if you want to have an inspirational, like a relationship in which you feed off of other people's inspiration and they feed off of yours, like be the one to make that bridge. I think there's like too much of people, and I've seen it in myself, of like being like, they're probably busy, or like if they wanted to talk, they'd call me or whatever. Like just be the one to do it. Like if that's something you want, is that community of people that are in your life that push the skills, like you might need to be the leader that brings that group of people together.
I think that's more what I was doing at the time. Like I was kind of like excited about being the weird one.
Right.
I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
It was, so there was that version of myself that was like connected, like listening, excited about everything, like constantly learning. Right. And then I started to see like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm the weird one. Right. Like I'm the one who cares about something a little bit deeper and doesn't want to just do like the normal everyday thing. And I was like trying really hard to bring other people into that, and then noticing like, okay, well, those people aren't going to come into this. Right. Part of it was being hard-headed enough, and let's just come out with it, mean enough to be like, I'm not going to hang out with you if you're not doing this. And I had friends who took that really, literally said that to friends, and they were like, that's super fucked up. And it was. Right, it was fucked up. All right. However, I wasn't coming at it from this, like, I don't like you. It was like, let me just be real here. This is what I'm trying to spend all my time doing. And if you're not going to do that, then I don't want to come over here and sit there and watch you play video games. I'm not going to fucking do that.
Yeah.
Right. I might have done that for a certain number of years. We had this unwritten social contract that I was going to sit here and talk about this, but I realized I don't give a shit about this.
Right.
Right. So there was like a willingness to not even just a willingness to be the weird one, but like really like pumped on like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm the weird one. Right.
Right.
And that helped. That really helped keeping that excitement going. And then, so I was looking at it more like, all right, I made this arrowhead and I'm so pumped on it, I just wanted to sit there. And I made another one. Let's say I had 10 of them, and like, I wanted to sit there. And then it was like they were in my car, right? Like sitting around the shifter. And then they were like on the bedside table. The basket was there, and the stuff was around, and it was just like right there around, and it was clutter. And that was another relationship wrecker. That was like, clean up your junk. Oh, it's not junk. Anyway, I didn't realize that I was doing this, but I think this is a huge part of keeping the excitement going, is like having it around all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And turning it into that brain patterning. If I'm seeing arrowheads around me all the time, I'm going to be that much more excited about picking up the stones and making arrowheads.
Right. Totally.
Versus not doing that because I'm never going to get any chicks with all this crap around.
Well, right. And it's like, yeah, tracking poster on the back of the door, tracking book on the back of the toilet. Like, yeah, like it should be around. I would say another thing, like, I didn't come up in the skills with a phone around, but like, fuck your phone.
It's
like,
got to be such a hard thing nowadays.
You're not going to learn fucking anything.
Oh, but there's lots of cool videos on YouTube. I'm like, burn. Yeah, it's...
But like,
here we are on YouTube.
Use it, right, but you like use it as a resource and then move on. Or like, you have to do the dishes, great, listen to our podcast. But like, you should never let any bit of shit on your phone stop you from physically getting up and doing something.
So funny how I have that resource, but I refuse to use it as a resource.
I mean, I don't. Like, when I wanted to learn breath holds, I looked up, how to hold your breath.
I can't do it. I can only distract myself. It's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
I can use it
because it's
as a
there,
resource
and I could be
then
using
move
it,
on.
but I don't have that.
I've learned that like
it's a
I
difficulty.
don't let myself get sucked into the rabbit hole. It's like
I get sucked in every fucking time.
I look for a couple
Thank
of
God for surfing.
good I look for a couple of good resources on it, and then it's like, all right, I want to go work on this, you know, and like you figure out who's offering advice that actually plays out in the real world, and then you go back to them.
Yeah,
like
it's definitely a
flint
hole in
napping
my
tips.
game. Is I don't utilize it as a resource enough.
Yeah.
It's a problem. You know, it's like not a big problem, but it's an unutilized resource for me.
Right. Well, and it can be paralyzing. Like there's so much. There's too much that like you could just be like, oh, what kind of basket do I want to work on, and then just be paralyzed by the 300 different basket types that you can come across if you look it up, as opposed to just being like, oh, that looks cool, I'm going to do that. And then when you've done that, like going back and be like, all right, what's next?
Well, I think a part of that for me that makes it difficult. So I like reading and I like looking at I like books. That to me, I could resource nerd out on books all day long. For whatever reason, like the computer doesn't really scratch that itch for me. And I think what it goes hand in hand with is like, for me, a lot of times I want to do it before I hear about it. I want to experience it before I hear about somebody else's experience with it. And so for me, it works better for me to sit down and break the rock, to sit down and weave the basket, even if it looks like total shit and I screwed up 500 times.
Right.
Like it's easier for my brain to accept that I did it, because I get into this it's not helpful, but I get into this thought pattern where it's like, if I watched you do it and I learned how you did it from watching you do it, and then I do it the same way you did it, there's part of me that doesn't want to own that wants to say that you did it. And I'm not saying that's the best way to do it, but what I'm saying is that I know enough about myself to know that I'll start by doing it and failing and then look it up.
Right.
But if I start by looking it up,
right.
There's a part of me that doesn't feel like I own it, and I don't get as excited about that.
Right.
And just knowing that in the first place helped me keep excited about it. Because then instead of looking at it like, oh, well, mine looks like shit, but theirs looks really great, and oh, man, now I suck at this, and now I don't want to do it because I suck at it, versus like, well, it might look like shit, but I came up with it on my own.
Right.
And then look at it and, oh, okay, well, I didn't like invent this.
Right.
But now at least I own it in that first part, right? So knowing how I learned best.
Yeah.
And I had to explore, I had to go through the process of learning this and exploring this to realize, oh, that's how I work best. And some people don't realize that they work best that way, and they try to do it the way somebody else did it, and it doesn't fit with the way their brain works, and so they don't end up keeping doing it. And it's not that they're not excited about the skills, it's that they don't realize that they learn best this way, so they're going to go about it this way.
Yeah.
You see, so
well, and I think also when you have experience with a skill, you know what you need to get better at. So like, going to Callahan after already flint napping for 5 years was fucking awesome.
It helped.
Because
glad I waited.
Yeah, because then it was like, all right, I know what I want to learn from this dude. I know where I'm weak. I know like what I want to get better at and what I don't know, and then I can like really get the marrow out of those things from him, as opposed to just being like, this is my first stop on the learning curve of it.
Yeah, for me that first stop had to be like within myself. It really did. Yes, I had to know,
get exposure.
I had to get exposure.
Right. And then let that exposure create passion. That passion creates an experience, and then that experience creates the desire for refinement, which leads you to more research and more education.
For some people, they need to take 100 classes to do it 100 times, and some people, maybe they have to do it 100 times before they take that next class. But there's like a self-knowledge there.
I would advise against that, though. I would say I would say over researching and like over. Because it will steal your energy to do it. It will make you in a way think you have done it, and like
totally.
I think it's like put as much as you can aside and just get your hands dirty, and then let that experience of it be a guide. Because ultimately, as much as like none of us are inventing any of these skills, they're as old as
there's always somebody who's done it that way.
Right, and so but for you to do it is a discovery.
Totally.
It has to
It
be.
is new territory because
Right.
it hasn't been in your brain and in your body yet,
right, you
and that's a
haven't
new
done it with
place.
your
That's a new
hands.
place for it.
Right. And so like the doing of it is where the rubber meets the road, and not like knowing about it is meaningless compared to experience.
So I think in our modern way of looking at the world and our modern way of experiencing the world, we tend to I don't want to say the word normalize. I want to say like nominalize, like negate the specialness, right? Negate the power of it. So I said, the friend that was talking to you about this, that made you say, hey, this could be a good topic for us to talk about. We were having a conversation. He was like, oh, it's so badass because when I hear these stories, I'm like, God, these people are superheroes. Or what he said was, oh, these people are like superheroes. I want to be like that. And I was thinking to myself, they are fucking superheroes. Like, they really are, right? And allowing it to still be this otherworldly thing. Yeah, I remember we had this student here for a long-term stay, and he was talking about this sweat lodge that we were doing, and afterwards it was like, it was like this crazy psychedelic experience. And when you do something a whole bunch of times, like the first time you do it, it's like this really powerful, moving thing, but then you do it enough times, and all of a sudden it's, oh, I've just done that before. I've seen that before. It's just a turkey vulture. You know, like we choose that way of looking at it, right? So you have to, it helps if you're constantly recognizing the specialness. You're constantly like giving it power. Right. We tend to say that if you give it power, I'm just saying in our modern world, that it doesn't count if you're just giving it power, right? Or we tend to look at the world from this lens of like, we need scientific proof that it happens like this. A, B, C, D, E, F, and G happens, when sometimes it's like, let it be magic, right? Let it be this magical, powerful thing.
So what we say to people with bow drill all the time is like, it's not magic, it's magical. And what I mean by that is like, it is a physical reality of like heating up wood fibers to the point of combustion. And there is a physical way to get there. The fact that you can do that is fucking cool, and it's magical. Like let it be magical.
It's more powerful than magic, is what I was thinking. It's more powerful than like, it's magic.
Right. Exactly, because you can do it. But like, so you have to kind of hold. To me, it's like holding the two things at once. Like, yes, there's a physical reality that gets me from A to B, like birth. If you've been at a birth, you're like, this is fucking insane. Like, this is mind-blowing.
Unless you choose for it not to be. Is what I'm saying is I think what kills the stoke is the choice. We choose to kill the stoke.
Right. You are dead inside if you witness your child's birth, or even anybody's birth, and you're not like, holy shit, this is like extra.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that we have been trained by our society to steal the magic from ourselves.
Sure. Yeah, I get that.
We have been trained to be, oh, well, it's not magic, it's this.
Right.
Right? And it seems like it's just semantics, but it's not just semantics to be like, it's magical. Let me tell you how it works.
Well, and it's like the person who you like start a bow drill fire and they're like, I have a lighter. And you're like, cool. Eat this bag of dicks.
That's great because I love the taste of it. It's great. I love the taste of dicks. Yeah, exactly. It tastes great. Like, don't make a short out of that. Yeah. We're finally going to hit big on the internet because I said I love the taste of dicks.
But seriously though, it's like, you know, like there's always some kid when you're doing bow drill or you're about to demo bow drill who's like, I saw this on TV, and I'm like, cool, tell me what it smells like. And they're like, huh? And I'm like, tell me what it sounds like.
Well,
like,
it's easier to kill it in somebody than it is to do it yourself.
Right, exactly. And so that's why the experience matters, and that's why, like, there's almost no other reason to study these skills other than you get the experience of living through doing them. Like, because all the other reasons don't, like, oh, if there's a fucking nuclear fallout, like, my bow drill's not going to do anything for me.
It'll do something, but it's not going to get rid of that nuclear radiation.
Right, but like ultimately, the reason to do these skills for me was not since I was very young. Was it some like imaginary survival situation? It was that I like doing them. Like, I like making arrowheads because I think it's dope the way it sounds when you break the rock. I think it feels good in my hand. I think it's fucking cool that it's a piece of rock that's hard and sharp. And I think it's cool that people have been doing it for millions of years. And like,
see, that's all well and good, Brad, but what about those people who don't know that they want to do it because it makes them feel good? That's what we're talking about, right?
So it's easy. Shut up
but
and
it's
do the
easy for
skills.
you and it's easy for me because we're naturally like, oh, I'm fucking pumped about that. But what about those people who are like,
then maybe
oh,
this isn't for them.
Holy shit, this is like superheroes. Nah, but I think people want it, right?
Well, right.
But you're talking about two different worldviews here. You're talking about the worldview of like, of I've seen that and I've done that before. So I'm gonna so without even saying it or without even thinking it, I'm gonna devalue it because it's already been done. Versus, whoa, this is like something really powerful and deep, right? So there's the surface level understanding of the world.
So we're
right?
back where we ended the foot napping one,
Like,
which is that you need to do mushrooms.
Is that?
I can't help
But
you.
not just microdosing. You got a macro dose, not a hero's.
But like to a certain
version.
degree, though.
No, let's
is
keep
a
talking
point
about mushrooms.
at which like you do like. I guess that is something to say about like keeping the stoke alive, or like is like connect to whatever part of you got turned on by it, and like shut up any voice that tells you that isn't the thing to grab onto and hold onto. Like live your life differently. Like inhabit a different worldview. Like don't live for your retirement. Don't live for like a future experience. Like I mean, and that is like
so
of all
there's
the
a big
things
there's
that
a big overcoming of fear here now that we're talking about because we've been trained to look at the world. Okay, so you need the job and you need to have the financial security and then you get to do the fun thing. But you can't do the fun thing without doing all of this other stuff first, right? And so maybe I'm super pumped on this and I'm like, oh, I took this class and it was so amazing and it was so great. And but now I go back home and I do it and it's cool, but oh well, now I still have to spend it 75% of my day doing the shit that I don't like, right? And so now we have like a fear of change going on. You're saying shut the fuck up and do it, right? You're saying like get over it and make it magical, right? There's a whole set of fears that has to be overcome right there. I agree with you that I think it's simple, but I think the reason why it's not so simple for people is because they're still trying to step over that fear gap of like, oh, I can't spend 90% of my free time doing that because then what am I going to become? Like I live in a society that values the click and that values the 500 million clicks more than the one time where you did it and nobody was around to click on the fucking button because there's no fucking button to click. And I got to make that shit magical when everything around me, all the fucking YouTube videos and podcasts around me are saying, give me more clicks, right? It's got to be personal. It's got to come from, in here, not from up here. And there's a fear gap there. Because we're trained to live in here, and when we go to the heart, we feel that, and we're, oh my God, but whoa, I got to come back up here because that's how I make the money.
Right. Well, I mean, to a certain degree, though, yes, you have to make that leap, and then also part of it is
a leap of faith.
Part of it is mindset too, of being like, so like now I have less time to work on skills than ever before because I have kids. But working on raising kids is a skill. Like teaching my daughter to emotionally regulate through disappointment is a skill. And like I can suck at that skill. I kind of do. But if I see it as a skill that I can get better at, then I'm working on skills. I'm working on some of the most important skills that will make me a better teacher. It'll make me better at running scout class. It'll make me a better leader. It'll make me a better team leader.
So, yeah, but see, look, there's a big choice in there. There's a huge choice in there, and you're able to make that choice because you released the fear of it's not valuable. I think this all comes back to like a value system, and that we're trained that the value is the external versus the value is the confluence, the meeting point of the external and the internal. And that the internal has value, but we're trained in a society that totally destroys the value of the internal, right? Prove it. How do you prove it? right? How do you prove a feeling? You can't prove a feeling with 500 million data points, because the person can still choose to look at it. Well, they just told you that. They just said it was cool. Did you put a diode on their head and find out that in the medulla oblongata they had a freaking change of chemicals?
So what I think you said is really interesting is that it needs to be both, and that's where I fall. And like when I ran from what you're talking about as a young man, I ran into the arms.
From what?
From like, it has to be provable. It has to be based on...
Not faith-based.
Right. And I ran fully into faith is all that matters. And then I was like, whoa, these people are also fucking crazy. And then finding that middle ground where both are important to make something true. Like, I stutter when people are like, oh, the proof doesn't matter, because I'm like, no, it needs to work. Like, I can't just look at my daughter who's sick and be like, well,
suck it up, kid.
You just have to have faith that your body will heal it and you'll be fine, and not give her medicine. Like,
point taken.
What I mean? So it's
point
like,
taken.
There is that balance of like, the faith, the leap of faith you have to take in order to give something that magic, to like let it inhabit a special place, needs to meet with an impact or an effect in the real world for you and the people around you. And like, I also think that like people have obligations that are real. You have obligations to your body to put a certain number of calories in it a day, or shit's not going to work out that well for you.
Totally. But then again, okay, like, who doesn't look at somebody who does a hunger strike for something that they believe in and think, fuck yeah, right? So what I'm saying is that, okay, you're saying you just said something about like proof, right? Or like prove to me that it worked, right? So you want to have some proof, right? Something that's like something to hold on to.
An impact.
Yeah, exactly, right? But I guess what I'm saying is like there's an amount of choice that goes into what does proof mean? What does it mean to prove it? Am I willing to accept that this person had this powerful, moving experience, and they're coming to me in tears? And I've had this happen where from a class, this person came to me in tears and told me this story about how what I said, and this isn't from me, but what I said during that class helped them realize a way to get past this trauma that they had been carrying in their whole since the trauma happened, most of their life. And thank you very much. That was amazing, right? And I turned around, I walked back down the trail towards my shelter, and as I was on my way, I was literally thinking to myself, oh, I didn't really do much this week, right? So that person couldn't say to me, here's the readout on the biofeedback machine that says that it's true that what you did actually did impact me, right? So I was having a moment there where I wasn't accepting the proof that was there because did I need it to be more scientific? Is that because of the way I grew up? And I think a lot of times we just grow up in this world that only values a certain type of proof, but we have to be able to accept that, like, if it's true for you, it's true for you, and there's truth in there, even if it's not what would be true for me and what would move me. I have to accept that there's this middle ground here, and that I can move to that middle ground and be like, all right, this is proof enough. Right.
I mean, I think that's there's like that experience is like a game of mindset. And I think that is half the battle, at least. But at the same time,
totally agree.
Like, you did have a real impact because that person, if that person's lived experience was different, and they treated people differently, and they inhabited the world differently, then there is a real and measurable impact. And it doesn't matter, like, if you have to, it doesn't matter if it's anecdotal or if it's not, like, a diode readout, but that like that is a real impact. And I think like that's, to me, part of the skills is like, so like if I lift every morning, there is a difference in my mood that, like, yes, every week the weights go up or the reps go up, and that's measurable, But to me, it's not nearly as measurable as me having more patience with my daughter.
The unmeasurable thing has a measure, but it's not by numbers.
Right, and it's often more important and more powerful for your life.
Typically.
And that, like...
But having that number that backs it up is helpful. So I see your point in that regard too, right? It's meeting those two. It's not just ignoring
it's meeting the two. And it's like, so, hunting's a great example, or fishing, spear fishing, whatever it is. Like, you can just go to the store and buy meat. But, like, learning to accept the failure of hunting and have, like, the beauty of the morning be what feeds you, that is a lesson that is more powerful than, like, I got 80 pounds of venison off this little deer or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that... The deer meat is important, but also, like, did you learn to enjoy the way there? Did you learn, like, a different way that the world looks 40 minutes before sunrise and carry that for the rest of your life as something special? Did you have a sharp-shinned hawk almost land on your head and, like, have a morning you'll never forget? Like,
it was a Cooper's hawk, but anyway.
Yeah, like... and it was pissed. I realized that was not a branch.
It was the mockingbird that landed on my head. And I went like this, and then my brother made fun of me. Oh, nature boy. Doesn't like it when the bird lands on him.
Dude, I was terrified of a pileated woodpecker landed on the tree I was sitting on and started pecking like 5 inches from my head. And I was like, that could peck a hole in my head. Like, fucking now I'm like scooting away from this dinosaur, being like, you're actually really big up close, pileated woodpecker.
There was that's this same friend we were talking about. Anyway, go ahead.
But I mean, to get back to like how to carry the stoke, it's like, let this shit infest your brain and let it inspire you and like, and make it a part of your life. Like, force it into your life and like grip onto it like it's vital to your survival, because it is.
Oh, of course.
It's vital to you being alive.
Of course.
And if it doesn't feel that way, then find what is that way to you and fucking hug it to your chest.
Yep. So that same person who sparked this topic was talking about somebody who was talking to somebody about the hunting class that we're doing, and the person, he was saying, oh, do you know Matt and Carmen, what they do, blah, 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 blah. And, I mean, I don't personally know this person. I mean, I know who he is, but the person was like, kind of not really saying what he thought, and finally came to it, and the person was like, they're just doing a fantasy thing, right? Like, they're just, what's the point? They're going hunting, but yeah, they could just go to the store, blah, blah, blah. And he really meant it in this really, like, kind of heavy, like, my reaction when I heard that was, fuck that dude, like, motherfucker. But then it's turned since then to be like, I'm really sorry, right? I'm really sorry that you can't value something that doesn't have a number next to it. But I'm sorry for them, but that choice didn't happen in a vacuum. And I don't think we recognize often enough how affected we are by the modern way of looking at the world that devalues everything that doesn't have a data set to back it up.
Right, or like how much...
You said something about anecdotal, right?
What number do you die with in your bank account?
Why is it that one story is anecdotal, but 10,000 of those one stories is now data? It's just a lot of anecdotes, right?
Right. I mean, there is a point at which, like...
Yeah, you want the data. You want the fire to burn you, not just look cool, right? You want it to cook the food, not just have the imaginary. I get that, but...
And you want to know, like, that it worked for more than one person, or because people trick themselves, and because, like, people fabricate narrations to serve things that are not their lived truth.
So what you just said is, it's not about how do I keep the stoke. It's how do I keep from killing the stoke. Because we subconsciously kill it. True. We subconsciously kill it.
I mean, honestly, we beat it out of our children.
It's been beaten out of us.
Metal desks.
It's been beaten out of us.
Sitting in a fluorescent lit room with cinder block walls, learning like sit in your seat.
Right.
This is what's important.
Success is having
Don't
lots of
follow
money.
your body's urges.
You
Don't
can do
follow
anything
your
in
own
life.
passion
You
to
can be a
learn.
millionaire. You can
Right.
have 17 cars.
Oh,
You can have a
dude.
big house. They never said, oh, you can do something that fulfills your heart.
Right.
They never said that to me, right?
Well, and what's crazy is like learning as a mammal should be one of the more enjoyable things you do as a young mammal. Like you are wired to enjoy learning.
It is.
And
it is
like
enjoyable.
the fact that we beat it out of most people to the point where like
because we make it external, I think. I think that's all it is. It doesn't count if you learn it. It counts if you
separate
can
it from
prove
the
that you
internal.
can learn
It's
it.
not just that we make it external, because some of it, we live in an external world. It's that we separate it from the internal and we make the internal unimportant.
Exactly.
So like instead of being like, what are you stoked about learning? Let's follow that. You're like, this is what's important, and everything in you that says what's important is not true.
Well, then it's all Montessori school.
I mean, to a certain degree, though, like that's why
Should be.
Montessori works,
Should be.
because it's to the level of the kid and it engages with what the kid is into.
Totally true.
Yeah. So I mean, and that is, I would say, like, this is like one of the cheesier things I might have ever said. As an
Ooh,
adult,
Brad's coming with
is
the cheese.
like connecting with the childhood feeling of being excited about something is like, it's how you keep the stoke alive. Or it's like when you get stoked, that's your internal young person
Brad,
drive to learn
you
some
just
shit.
externalized your inner child right there.
But like the part of me that's excited about an arrowhead is 10.
There's an inner child in there.
Yeah, like,
He's in there.
rocks that are sharp. Fuck yeah, cut you. Like the part of me that's like willing to study ninjutsu forever is like the part of me that's like, I'm a ninja. But like if it doesn't work, then I know, like, okay, it has to work. At least like there has to be a doable goal there.
It's
But,
true.
like,
Well, there we go again. It's meeting those two.
right. And
It's
I would
meeting
say,
those two. But I think the external is so easy, and that it's so easy that it can't carry the stoke by itself. Right? You do the fire. I'm not saying easy. It's not easy to shoot a deer. It's fucking hard with the bow and arrow and stone. Shit is so goddamn hard.
Right.
But what I'm saying is it's easier to meet that goal than it is to keep the feeling alive. In our modern way of looking at things, it's easier because I can do the fire enough times that I could do that fire enough times. But can I keep it special? Can I keep it magical, or am I just going to, okay, I've done that before, right?
Yeah.
I can study that bird, and that shit happens to me every day. It's like, I got to stay here till I see more than just a thrush, right? Because I see them every day, and it's like, hold on, back the fuck up. I don't know where that bird really, where its territory.
Right.
There's so much to explore there, but it's so easy to turn it into something that I've experienced. Right. And so I gotta come back to that choice of like, no, make it special. Right. Even though that doesn't carry like an explicit meaning, special, right? It still has meaning. We feel it, but we can't put a number to it.
Right. Yeah, and so I think for me the way that the external does bring me there is like doing the things, like getting the experiences, going to the class where you experience all these things and you're around other people who are stoked, like that sets a bar. It sets a tone, so that you can then go into your day-to-day life and make the choice to see everything in that way that you were seeing things then. And so it's like, it's that back and forth that like, if you're someone who's like struggling, how do I bring this into my day-to-day life? It's like, well, part of it is if you know that taking classes brings it up for you, like makes it, that gets you excited, then like plan 4 of them a year and be like, okay, I know I need to go do this for myself. Or like, if you know that, like put that stuff in your way so that it keeps the stoke high, knowing, because like
But I would still say it's going to carry more power if you don't make it just that.
Sure.
You can't just do that.
No. So you have to then do the work at home.
In between, yep.
Yeah, and then, but let like the two things feed each other back and forth. And I think that's the truth of it, is you got to find a balance between like external inspiration and internal inspiration. And, like make sure that you're choosing what you bring in terms of like media or input of like, okay, you can't work on skills all the time, but you can read about them a lot, or you can like
have them sitting around.
Right. And you're like, okay, I am going to rest, but like while I rest, I'm going to watch, Nanook of the North or The Great Dance or, whatever, like nature videos. And like you can pull things in that direction so that there's always an input that's like keeping the fire lit. And like putting it in your way too. Like we had interns who were stoked on bow drill and they were like, how do we get good at bow drill? And they were both cigarette smokers. And I was like,
only like that with the bow drill.
Or at least I was like, I was a cigarette smoker. So I was like, that first cigarette of the day is a big deal. Do not smoke a cigarette each day until you light your first one with a coal. Because realistically, you can't, they were my interns. I didn't want them spending all fucking day bow drilling. But like,
so you came up and did the bow drill and lit their cigarette and then get to work.
But it was like, I would see them like, it would be about to be work time and they're furiously ripping.
I gotta have my cigarette.
Yeah. But like those dudes got really good at bow drill that summer. And like, became really good teachers on it.
And they dropped down to 9/10 of a pack a day.
Exactly. Yeah. And they they learned to feel the nicotine fit without like losing their mind. But yeah, it's like, you got to put it in your way and you got to make it of vital importance, by setting those goals or like, don't put it away. Like that's when I want to get better at photography, I bring my camera everywhere.
Yep.
Like, even if it's annoying to my wife.
Well, so last thing I'm going to say on this is like, I can't agree with that more, right? You got to do it. You just do it. But then accept what you've done. Accept that what you've done is enough.
Right. Yes. 100%.
So important because that'll kill the stoke as well. I haven't done enough because I put it down.
Right.
Right. Like allow yourself to rest and allow that seed to get planted in the soil. Don't keep digging it up.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, that's one of the things about running a school that's fucking awesome is that like, because of our schedule, I come back to skills at least once a year. And so like, no matter what, I know I'm building a couple bows every year because of the bow class. Like, and that the distance from something when you come back around to it is in itself so powerful because you can look at it new. It's not always, that wound isn't always scratched open. Like now it's healed over and you can learn from what your mistakes you made in the past. You're not like as emotionally intense about it. You can reapproach. And so even if I didn't have the school helping me do this with things that like, again, are not like filmmaking, that's not, I don't have to do it. Like, I take breaks from it and then I get re-obsessed with it and then I can see it differently. Like that is so powerful. And so like you said, like giving yourself, being okay with taking breaks and being okay with like wherever you're at on the journey. Like most of that shit, that's one of the big mistakes I made was like letting my ego get involved and comparing myself to others. It's like, are you on the road? Are you doing the thing? Are you getting better every day? Even if you're in a mistake phase, like, or like a lack of discipline phase, like, is it vital and important to you? Do you still care about it? Are you still engaging with it? Like, you're winning, because you could just be watching the next episode or whatever bullshit and not caring about your life at all. And then you'll fucking be on a deathbed somewhere and it'll be gone.
Why didn't I spend more time?
Right.
Well, this has been a good discussion.
Yeah.
And we might have to revisit this at some point.
Get off the fucking phone or the internet.
Turn off our YouTube
Go do
video
something.
right now.
Yeah.
Right now.
After clicking like and subscribe.
Exactly. All right, peace out.
And
That's
maybe
it.
share it.
That's it.